Three.
Good day. Welcome back to our radio Verbum Day to the Rhythm of God. Once again, we will be having this episode in English because we have a special guest today, all the way from a beautiful country called Philippines. She is here right now with us in Madrid, Spain, and we are glad to be able to invite her to share with us her vocation story and her missionary story too. Let us welcome Grace Gonzales. Welcome po.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be here in Radio Home Day.
First of all, tell us something. Why are you here right now in Madrid, Spain? And how has been your experience so far?
Yeah, well, I arrived only last week, and I came from Philippines, and I am actually here to do a project on the life of Jaime
Mhm.
in celebration of his 100 years of birth this May.
That is true. For everybody's attention, this year we are celebrating the 100th year of our founder Jaime Bonet, and we have been doing different projects to be able to promote and show to the people the beautiful life of our founder and how God has called him to build this community that we are now in. Thank you so much for that project. We will be praying for you, and we are united in you doing it so that it can bless a lot of people. Okay, talking about Jaime, let's just dive into that. Have you ever met Jaime Bonet?
Yes, I met him personally in Philippines twice actually.
Twice.
Yeah,
Wow.
so the first one was when I was in the formation course, actually right after the formation course, and I had the opportunity to have him in my first vows.
First
Yeah,
bout with Jaime
he was the
Bonet.
one who celebrated the mass, and
Wow.
he received me, of course, the community, and also my second, well, what you call that? No,
Second
second
temporal
vows, second
vows.
temporal vows. Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Wow, that's a privilege, huh?
yeah.
Because we are in the generation who haven't met Jaime Bonet personally
Mm-hmm.
anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So we would like to know what struck you about him as a person.
Yes, I mean, I met Jaime that year, and he was actually giving a retreat to the disciples. I mean, to all of us, and he kept on repeating his experience when he was 14 years old, and his experience of God, no, of asking, no, if you exist, no, make me happy, no, and asking himself if there is more to the life, no, that he was living. So for me, yeah, it struck me a lot, no, because he was a man of God, and he was a man of prayer. And that time when I saw him there in our center in Tagaytay, sometimes I passed by the chapel and I could see him, very close to Jesus in the tabernacle. And I said to myself, I would like to be like that, to be able to have that closeness with God.
That's very interesting because this closeness with God is not only spiritual but also physical in some sense.
Mm.
As you mentioned that he used to pray very near
Mm-hmm.
to the tabernacle. It only shows this spirituality, this charism
Mm-hmm.
that he has shared with all of us
Mm-hmm.
to have that familiar dialogue with God, with Jesus in the Eucharist. And I hope we can continue to live that out
Mm-hmm.
together as missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
Now, tell us more about yourself, Grace, before knowing Verbum Day or
Mm-hmm.
being a missionary.
Mm-hmm.
How was how were you
Mm-hmm.
when you were younger, when you were
Mm-hmm.
starting life, discovering it?
Uh-huh. Um, well, where to start? Before I met the community, I was studying computer technology, and actually, yeah, it was something that at the end I enjoy doing. because that was not my first option. But yeah, I had many dreams. I was, had many plans, in my life, for the future, for myself, for my family. And yeah, I studied just maybe 15 minutes from the house of the missionaries in Tagaytay. And yeah, it was then there that I met them in my school. And for me, it was an experience of being renewed, no, because I've never seen nuns or missionaries wearing, civilian clothes, no, because I came from a convent school. I was studying in a convent school, and I was also, quite close to the sisters there. But I never thought, no, of, entering in a community or in a convent one day. But I think their presence in my school, because they were the campus ministers, and I was one of the youth leader there in my school, so I got to know them a little bit more.
So how old were you when you met them?
I was actually only 16 when I met them. I was first year college, and it was in I think a recollection, I think, from what I can remember. And this group of young people came down from Manila. They had a recollection there. They presented a song forum, and I was so attracted to the music. I was so attracted to their, joy, to their youthfulness, and then and as well in the prayer that we had. So it was my first time actually, like, treating Jesus as my friend at that moment, no? Because I remember they gave a letter, not of the Godfather, but letter from Jesus, and it was then that I saw him as someone so real, as someone so close to me, because I had many friends, and that was the time where, I don't know if you remember, I think you were still young. But we didn't have Friendster or Facebook at that time,
Yeah.
but the normal thing was the pen pals, and the phone pals, and all this. And for me, it's like Jesus was someone so real, that I said, no one can really offer that kind of friendship, that he's offering to me. And I felt so happy after that encounter. And yeah, that was the beginning, yeah, of my journey.
So the beginning was that joy you experienced from your existential encounter with Jesus as your close friend. It's really connected with the thing you have mentioned in the beginning. This joy that Jaime Bonet also experienced. If you exist, make me happy. And the experience that God really exists. And that God is close. And that's also in the same way you experienced when you were 16 years old. You were also very young, like Jaime Bonet, when you had this personal encounter with Christ. So how has been your journey from then?
Yeah, actually, I didn't want to be a missionary from the beginning. So, when I started to feel like God was calling me for something more, I was so afraid, because, I had my own plans, as I said. I was already planning my future. I wanted to have a good job. I want to earn money. I want to have a good family. So, the thought, of me leaving my family, the thought of living my dreams, was something so scary. I'm the youngest of eight, and my life, I would say, I was spoiled, as the youngest in my family. And to think of, living a life of, in a way, independent, from my family was difficult. So yeah, to leave my family whom I love a lot. It was, for me, was a something difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my fear, no? And another fear that I had, no, if I would, be faithful, not till the end. No, so at the beginning, I was really so reluctant, and I was even, hiding literally from the missionaries when they come and visit my school. And there was a time where I didn't want to talk to them, where when I didn't want to, even attend any of the prayer sessions because I was really afraid. But when God calls you, it's like you cannot really escape. No, it's if it's this is meant for you. I think really God would do all what it takes, not to for you to answer His call. Yeah.
And what has been the way of God to convince you to to let you know that this call is what would really make you happy?
Mm-hmm. Well, there were many moments, where I said that I was I was very scared, but I think that didn't stop me at the end to to continue searching. So I didn't tell actually anyone about my vocation. None of the missionaries even knew that I was discerning. But I attended the Holy Week encounter, in 2000. No, sorry, 1995. 1995 sounds long time ago. And it was there that actually I had a very clear, calling from God. And actually, I didn't know how to discern. I was very young at the time. And I was asking God, for signs. Give me a sign. If you want me to be a missionary, then let the missionary come and invite me. And if you want me to get married, then let a guy offer a white rose. Now I was asking for a white rose.
Very specific.
Very specific, no? Since you ask for a sign, it has to be specific, right? So and in that Holy Week retreat, I remember it was a Holy Saturday, and I was listening to this missionary who was giving the talk actually of call to love. And at the end, as we normally do, we give passages and questions. So the passage that was given to us was Luke 5, the calling of Peter. And at the end of the passage, there were questions. And the question was, what is God's invitation to you now? And for me, that was so clear. His words, his invitations to me was very clear. Come and follow me. Leave behind your boat and come and follow me. And I was like, I was telling God, no, I don't need any missionary to invite me. Actually, to tell you the truth, nobody invited me. So if I will follow that, that sign, I would say, this is not for me because anyway, nobody invited me to be a missionary. But Jesus was telling me, I am the one. I am the one asking you to follow me. And, for me, that was the joyous moment of my life. I was so happy. I remember I was in front of the chapel with so many people there, and I was crying. And I was just, happy to say yes to God. Yes, I will follow you. And all my fears actually at that moment, disappeared. And I said, I will follow you against all odds. So yeah, that was my experience.
That was a mystical experience, I would say. I have been hearing different kinds of calling, and most of the people, they experience a calling in a gradual way or different various moments. But you have that powerful, strong experience that really has called you to this life in a direct way that nobody has really intervened, but it was a one-on-one with Jesus. That experience is so beautiful. It was like perhaps the experience of Saint Paul when he had this encounter with Christ, and from that moment, pa, that's it. I give my whole life to you. So what did you do by that time? Did you tell it to the missionaries, or did you tell it first to your parents or to your friends? What were the steps you made during that time?
Yeah, actually, I actually didn't tell anyone at that moment, no. But I guess the missionaries were sensing something already, and then they invited me to a like a discernment retreat after that. So like one month after that, so they invited me for a discernment retreat
Without them knowing this experience
without them knowing
still?
this
Yeah,
experience,
okay.
because I didn't say anything to anyone, no. But as I said, they already knew. Actually, they told me later on, no, that actually they knew that perhaps I have vocation, and so they invited me. So so I attended that retreat, no, and I think that was just really more a kind of follow up, no, from the experience that I had during the Holy Week, and Jesus was kind of convincing me more and more, and I was more and more convinced, of following Jesus. And after that retreat, I remember a missionary sent me a letter, and told me, oh, this date you can already come and enter. I remember it was May 9. And I was so excited, no, but I didn't know how to tell my parents, especially my mom, right? So, but I was preparing for that day, to leave everything, and I prepared my bag. I actually just graduated at the time, and then the day came, May 9, and it was that day that I told my mom, my parents.
The same day when
The
you
same
were
day,
about to leave.
the same day. So you can imagine, the
Yeah.
shock of my mom, and she was quite upset, of course. I'm the youngest. No, I just graduated. Now she had many dreams for me, and then she didn't in a way agree, with my decision. And I remember that day I couldn't leave the house, because I was just crying the whole day. I didn't eat, and my siblings were just talking to me, and saying, why don't you think about it first? No, why don't you work first and see later on? No, you're still very young. No, I just turned 18, no, at the time, so really very young.
You were very young, and you already finished school.
Yeah, because it was just a technical
Okay.
technical course, which was 2
Okay.
years. So I just finished, and actually I didn't tell my parents, and actually maybe now they will know. No, my family, that actually before I graduated, I was offered a job. No?
Yeah, okay.
So if they knew that, the more they would.
The more they would say, like,
yeah,
take the
yes.
job first.
Yes. So it was really a very radical decision for me. So I didn't leave that day, but the following day, May 10, I had to go to my school and to get my, my
Certificate.
documents, my certificate, and all this. So I remember talking with my professor, who was quite supportive of my vocation, and he was telling me, that's your life, that's your happiness. And he told me other things that made me to think, yeah, this is my decision, and I shouldn't let anyone, even my own parents, prevent me, to follow the will of God, to follow my desires, to be happy. So from there, with my two friends, I went to the missionary's house and didn't come back anymore to my house.
Without even telling them.
Without even telling them. Without even telling. I didn't have any money. I didn't have clothes. So I
And
arrived.
you didn't even have a bag.
No, I didn't have a bag because I didn't have any plan
You just
to
came from
live.
school.
Yeah, I just
and then
came from
you went
school.
to
Yes, and
the house of-
in a way, I eloped. I eloped with Jesus.
That's what 18 years old do.
Yeah. So, and the missionaries received me, and I told them the whole story. And then two missionaries that day, they went to my house to explain to my mom, especially to my parents, that I already left the house, and yeah, I will be a missionary.
That was truly radical, I would say. Like, literally, you left everything behind. You left your bag, you left your clothes, you left your family, you
Mm-hmm.
left the people you love to follow this person,
Mm-hmm.
follow this love of your life, to elope, let's say, with Christ. So, and what have you found in Christ that
Mm-hmm.
has really made you do such a thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for me is the first thing is that I fell in love with God. No? So for me is, I found the love of my life. No, I remember saying to one of my classmates when I was in college that, without even thinking that I would be a missionary or religious, I said, oh, if I get married, you won't see my partner or my husband. I didn't know what I was thinking at the time, no, but on hindsight, I realized, no, that was God. No, it's like my my partner, my husband is someone that I will spend my life with, but you won't see him. No, so for me it's like that experience of really God fulfilling me. I think that was the experience, no, that I had. No, that's why I gave my life for God, because if I am not in love with God, no, there's no point, no, of giving up everything, because He's the only reason why I did what I did.
That is truly an experience of a consecrated
Mm.
person, of a person who leaves everything behind for God and does everything for God. In this following of God, tell us your experiences, your most impactful experiences with Jesus, and where did He lead you in this journey?
Mhm. Well, most impactful experience, I think there are many, I would say. But now, maybe one of the things that I can remember was the first time I left, so to speak, my comfort zone. No, because when I entered in the community, the house of the missionaries was just 20 minutes away from my house.
Mm.
So after the formation course, actually, I was sent to Cebu, which is like going to another country because they speak another dialect.
Mm.
And really, literally, I was coming out of my province, from my place. And I remember, we were still traveling by boat at the time. It took like 24 hours to reach Cebu, to reach the south of the Philippines. And we arrived in the port at dawn. No, it was rising. The sun was rising. And I remember, having that prayer with Jesus, and He telling me, "This is the people, no, I send you to." And you remember our agreement, no? Because we had an agreement. No? When I left my family, I told to God, I will take care of you people, but take
Mm.
care of mine.
Mm.
No? And this is what also he told me. You take care of my people and I will take care of yours.
Mhm.
So when I arrived in Cebu, that was my first, in a way, assignment after the formation course. That was, the covenant, no, that I made with God, na, is something that I, until now, no, I hold on to. Now, when God asks you to take care of His people, He promises also to take care of yours. And I would say that God had never failed to, to fulfill, no, His promise. I won't say that there are no problems, nor there were no difficulties along the way, but God has been faithful to His words.
Wow, that's beautiful. Because along the way, as we follow God, He gives us promises and He fulfills those
Mm-hmm.
promises because He is faithful. We sometimes are not that
Mm-hmm.
faithful, but God is always faithful. And you have experienced that,
Mm-hmm.
the faithfulness of God.
Mm-hmm.
And also your fidelity has bore a lot of fruits to many people. But of course, we are human beings. We also fail
Mm-hmm.
in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us something that made you mature, made you grow as you follow God in your ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
experiences. Was there an experience that really has like changed you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, yeah, there were many experiences. Well, maybe one of the things that helped me a lot now in my following was when I was in Colombia.
Ah, you've been to Colombia from Cebu to Colombia
No, from
or
Cebu,
other
I went
place?
to Singapore. I was in Singapore for 12 years.
12 years.
Yeah,
You
so
had your perpetual vows there or you had it in the
well, I
Philippines?
was assigned in Singapore when I had my perpetual vows, but I did my perpetual vows in the Philippines
Okay.
during after the month retreat.
Mhm.
So after Singapore, I was sent to Colombia. Um, Basically to study Spanish.
Okay.
So I was only sent there actually for 8 months
Okay. What part of Colombia?
in Pereira. I
Ah,
was in Pereira. And then after before reaching my 8 months, I think it was only like I was only there for 5 months. I asked if they could, prolong my stay there, and they allowed me, to
okay.
prolong my stay. I enjoyed my stay in
So for how long have you been there?
Colombia. I was there for 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
3 years. Yeah. So it was challenging. First because of the language,
Uh-huh.
because none of my community members spoke English. No, so I was really
You
struggling.
were forced to speak
I was
Spanish.
forced to speak Spanish. The only people that I could, speak English were some young people who were also learning English. No, so at least I could speak to them. But with my community, it was a struggle. So for me, really, there were moments of like, not just feeling that you cannot express yourself, but the feeling of being alone. No, because
Yeah.
I am not sure if I'm really understood, no, by the people around me, and I couldn't really express myself. But more than the language is the whole thing of the culture of being so far away, from my family, from the place that I know, because it took me like 43 years to arrive to Colombia, from Philippines. So it really is a very, very far place. So yeah, for me that was one of the challenges that I faced. As I said, there are many, but it's something that had impacted me because it was in Colombia where I felt that I was free.
Free.
I have been praying, for God for internal freedom, because I saw myself before, like I couldn't express myself. But ironically, it was there that I felt myself so free that I could be myself, that I could, you know, yeah, don't care about what people think of me. So is there that I felt that I really need to grow, and I thought, that was the moment where I really felt the freedom. From then on, I felt I was free.
That's paradoxical. That's ironic, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how mysterious is the
Mm-hmm.
work of God.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's because also for being there, it's like having a new life experience. Okay, the past is past. Now, new chapter, new life. I will live it as a new person. I'm free to be whoever the person God wants me to be, free to be molded, to be transformed, to be mature. And these are like big experiences of our lives when God really molds us, when we allow Him
Mm-hmm.
to mold us in our vulnerability, in our weaknesses. That's where the strength of God is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful sharing, Grace. And for sure, you also enjoyed there because Pereira is a beautiful city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I love
it is.
Colombia too. Colombia is
Mm-hmm.
a mystical place, let's say. Lovely people.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, like Filipino people, they are very welcoming, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a lot of variety of good foods.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So from Colombia, you went back to the Philippines, or
No,
what other
from
mission?
Colombia, I was sent to Australia.
Australia.
Yeah, I was in Brisbane. Yeah,
So you had been in your uh, fourth country, Philippines, to
Philippines,
Singapore,
Singapore, Colombia,
Colombia, and to
and
Australia. So tell
Australia.
us something about your experience there as a missionary.
In Australia. So in Australia, yeah, I was only there for 2 years, but it was also a very, I would say, meaningful experience there. It's a very multicultural, like Singapore, different, but there's also similarity. So for me, is being there as well is experience of being, in the mission, you know, people from different walks of life, from different countries, because even if uh, I was there in a very small place, but you can meet people from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was a very rich experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Australia, you were sent to
I was sent to Philippines. I went back to
Philippines.
Philippines in 2018.
2018. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us your experience when you went back to the Philippines after many years.
Yeah, for me, so I was away in total. I was away for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to Philippines was just another experience. But I felt like as they said, it's a reverse culture shock. It's like going back to your country, but you're not the same, and the people are not the same. You know, the people in the apostolate, I didn't know most of them. I didn't know what was happening, no, in the ecclesiality, in the fraternity. So I was a bit lost, no, when I arrived there. But it's normal, no, being away for 17 years. But little by little, no, I was adopting. No, I was, immersing into the culture again, immersing into the mission, into the environment. So the first year that I arrived in the Philippines, I was actually in my sabbatical, and it had helped me so much, to at least to have that break, to prepare myself, for the next stage of my missionary life. So after 1 year and a half, I was elected as the branch responsible of the female branch. Yeah, so it was only last year that I left the responsibility, after 6 years.
Mm-hmm. You finish the
Yes,
responsibility.
yes, yeah. I finished the responsibility.
Okay. So how was the experience of being a responsible of the missioneras?
Yes, yes. So, well, I was the responsible of the missionaries, but of course, I belong to the zone,
Okay.
to the zone. It was beautiful, challenging, but very enriching, I would say. And I would say that it had helped me so much to grow personally and to love more the community.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned so much, from my experience. I would say that it had really marked me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I started when the pandemic was beginning, and I have lived a lot of many difficult situations of missionaries, of course, of my own family, of the people in the apostolate, and have accompanied them in all these situations. And I would say that really it had made me to love more my mission, to love more the community, and to love more my charism, as Bourbon Day. So it helped me in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope I have helped
Mm-hmm.
people in many ways too.
I'm sure. Because me myself, I have been helped by you. I still remember those spiritual exercises you gave us. When I arrived there year 2020, I remember that December.
Mhm.
You are simple, but very
Mhm.
deep in your
Mhm.
reflections. And I know how much you have helped others too
Mhm.
by who you are. Now, you have experience of like more or less 30 years of being a missionary. What do you say is the beautiful thing about being a missionary? How would you inspire, motivate, or encourage young people right now in this
Mhm.
path of
Mhm.
following Christ?
Mhm. Mhm. Um, for me, being a missionary is not just for oneself, right? It's true that I found happiness here. I find my fulfillment in giving myself to God, no? But I also believe that vocation is also for others. Is to make people happy, to make people find their own fulfillment. And being a missionary is where we can also find our joy. Being with God and making people to discover God Himself. So I think that's the beauty of missionary life, to be able to give God to them. And um, I have also enjoyed a lot spending my life, with His people, giving the Word of God, giving the food, that can really satisfy them, giving the word that can quench, their thirst. So even though we might say, that this life is something that you cannot predict what will happen in the future, but what is really sure is that God will always be there no matter what.
Wow. Is there like main passage, life verse that you always hold on to, especially in the most difficult moments of
Mhm.
your missionary life?
Yes, sure. I have many, but one of them is when God says, "If you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And the troubles will not overwhelm you." I actually made a song, with that passage, in Spanish.
Would you like to share with us the song?
Later on, I can share that song with you. So for me, that has been, my my security, that whatever happens in my life, God will always be there, and I will always be precious in His eyes, and He will always love me for I am. Yeah.
Mhm. It's Isaiah 54, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
In there. Okay. So, for the people who are listening to us
Mm-hmm.
right now, what would be your message to them?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the best message that one could give is really from the Word of God. No, I think I would say the same words of Jesus. Do not be afraid because I am with you. That's the only security that we can have in life. People can give us many promises. The world can say many words, promises to us, but you know the words of God are always true. The words of God are always something that we can rely on.
Thank you so much, Grace, for being with us and sharing us your life story
Mhm.
and inspiring us in so many ways to live the missionary life, because missionary life is for everyone.
Mhm.
For every baptized person, we are called to live
Mhm.
out our mission where we are, to live with God,
Mhm.
to live joyfully as you live, and to allow God to fulfill His promises through our lives.
Mhm.
Thank you so much once again. And we
Thank you.
pray for you, Grace, that you may be continuing to be
Mhm.
joyful and to be fruitful.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.